All right, the book of Ecclesiastes, if you're there. Ecclesiastes records Solomon's search for meaning. It's probably the best way to put it. Solomon was the wisest and richest king in history. And he personally experimented with this question of lasting value and happiness in this life. What is it that gives a person true meaning or lasting value and happiness? What is life all about, really? Well, when he starts the book, it says the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. And I have here at verse 2, he states his conclusion, really, already at the beginning of the book. Now, it's not really a conclusion yet, but that will be the conclusion he does reach, because he's realizing, he says, it's all vanity. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities. All is vanity. Now, the word vanity means vain, empty, futile. There is no lasting value. There's only value that is attributed to things by humans if your only purview is this life. Because there is that one thing that's always knocking at the door, and that's your mortality. You are going to die. I mean, that's just a lot of humans since the beginning. So we know that that is the one thing that is absolutely sure, is that we're mortal. And so now, searching for meaning in life, he sees, well, I want to search for meaning because everything I see is vanity. It's all going to end in vanity. We're all going to the grave, and it seems as if nothing is of any lasting value. Now, he uses another phrase, chasing after the wind. Chasing after the wind. And that recurs in this book too. Look at verse 14. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun. And indeed, it's all vanity and grasping for the wind, or chasing after the wind. And that's always kind of a picturesque illustration to think of, can you grab the wind? And you're thinking, well, I can grab the wind, but as I close my hand, the wind slips through my fingers, and then whenever I grasp, I don't have anything in my hand. And so that's kind of the illustration that, boy, you might be really pursuing some kind of a thrill or some kind of a motivation or excitement, but it's really nothing. It's empty in the end. You grasp it, but there's nothing there in the end. So there's lots of verses like that. Verse 14, verse 17, and I set my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. And I perceive that this also is grasping for the wind, because in much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. So the more you learn about life, the more you realize that it's vain, again, from the purview of this life. That's where he lives, and so that's where he's starting his search. Now, I have the next letter under the outline here, chapter 1, verse 3. A search for lasting value under the sun. That's the phrase that describes the fact that he is searching for meaning in this life, in this world, in his purview, in his existential experiences. So that's verse 3 says, what profit has a man from all his labor in which he toils under the sun? Under the sun. So that's, again, not bringing God into the equation yet. That's not how the systematic search is going to take place. It's going to be from life as we perceive it and see it in front of us, under the sun. And so that is to say, all that is done on earth, earthly or secular. Then verses 4 through 11, man is part of a relentless and, it seems, meaningless process of nature. Now notice what he says in verse 4. One generation passes away, and another generation arises, but the earth abides indefinitely. It continues on and on and on, seemingly indefinitely. The sun also rises, the sun goes down, and it goes back to where it was again. The wind goes toward the south, and then it will be coming from the south, right? It'll blow around to the north. The wind whirls about continually. It comes again on its circuit. Well, all the rivers, they just continue to flow. They all run into the sea, but the sea doesn't ever overflow. To the place from which the rivers come, there they return again. In other words, every cycle you see in the world, it just continues, seemingly unendingly. It just goes on. But the one thing that's certain again is we die. Humans don't continue on and on and on and on and on. They have an end. And that makes us search for, well, what's this all about? What's the meaning of all of this? And is there any lasting value that can be grasped? So I say here, nature continues indefinitely, but man does not. And so what is the purpose of it all? So that's how he is introducing his search. And so, number 2, the rest of the book, or the book gets into Solomon searches many avenues for meaning in life, many avenues of life for meaning. So I have several here. For example, intellectual fulfillment. Perhaps education will give me the lasting value and meaning that I'm searching for, something that will fill this sense of eternity that he's going to explain is in his heart. Maybe I just need more education. I need to go to college and get a lot of degrees. And I kind of already read that, didn't I? Like beginning in verse 13, I set my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all that is done under heaven, this burdensome task that God has given to the sons of men by which they may be exercised. And I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and indeed it is all vanity and grasping for the wind. Verse 16, I commune with my heart, saying, look, I have attained greatness, and I have gained more wisdom than all who are before me in Jerusalem. My heart has understood great wisdom and knowledge. And I set my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. And I perceive that this also is grasping for the wind. So, intellectual fulfillment, education, he realizes that's not really going to give you the kind of meaning that you're looking for. Academic accomplishment is how I put it in verses 16 through 18. When you get into chapter 2, how about just fulfilling your physical desires? Maybe I can just, hedonism, I guess is a way to put it, right? Where you just say, well, I'm just going to find all the pleasurable things in life that will fill all of my, lusts, basically. So he says in chapter 2, verse 1, so I said in my heart, come now, and I'll test you with mirth. So enjoy pleasures. But surely this also was vanity. And I said of laughter. So maybe comedy. Maybe comedy will get your mind off of things. Well, that's madness. Of mirth, what does it accomplish? I searched in my heart how to gratify my flesh with wine, while guiding my heart with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the sons of men to do under heaven all the days of their lives. So substance abuse or drug use or whatever gives you physical or fleshly satisfaction or pleasure. He's tried it. He said, maybe this is the secret to life, but it's all folly. He talks about all of his wealth and then using all of his, materialism to please himself. Verse 4, I made my works great. I built myself houses. I planted myself vineyards, made myself gardens and orchards, and planted all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself water pools from which to water the growing trees of the grove. I acquired male and female servants born in my house. I had greater possessions and herds and flocks than everybody in Jerusalem. And I gathered for myself silver and gold, special treasures, kings of the provinces. I acquired male and female singers, delights of the sons of men. So I became great, and I excelled more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me. Boy, you would think, this guy's got it all. This guy's got it all. Whatever my eyes desired, verse 10, I did not keep from them. I didn't withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my reward from all my labor. And then I looked on all the works which my hands had done, and on the labor on which I had toiled. And indeed, all was vanity and grasping for the wind. There was no profit under the sun. Of course, these are truths that you learn from the New Testament, right? The idea that what fruit did you have in the things of which you are now ashamed? Paul would ask in Romans 6. The end of those things is death. So there is the lust of the flesh that you have the option to strive to satisfy in the world. And he would say, basically, the only thing that's going to give you is temporary pleasure. but it's never going to give you real life. It's never going to give you real meaning and value in your life because it's vanity. Well, it's more than that. That part of it's sin, but the idea is even if it wasn't sin, it's fruitless. So I already mentioned, physical pleasure, letter D. I just read that, didn't I? The conclusion, wisdom, madness, and folly provided no lasting happiness. I think wisdom, madness, folly here is, partying and living irrationally just for the pleasure of it and things like that. That's madness and folly, but that does not end well. So what happens is depression and despair set in. In other words, humans need to grasp value and meaning and what really life is about in order to be content in their deepest heart. And when that's not there, it results in nihilistic thinking. He words it like this, chapter 2, verse 17. Therefore, I hated life because the work that was done under the sun was distressing to me. For all is vanity and grasping for the wind. And I hated all my labor in which I had toiled under the sun, because I must leave it to the man who comes after me. See, I'm mortal. I'm not going to be able to enjoy this stuff forever. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool. My whole rich inheritance will be squandered away, perhaps. And it'll be for nothing. It'll be just, there's not even going to be passed down from generation to generation to grandchildren. It could all be gone in a moment. Yet he will rule over all my labor in which I toiled and in which I have shown myself wise under the sun. This is vanity. Therefore I turned my heart and despaired of all the labor in which I had toiled under the sun. For there is a man whose labor is with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, yet he must leave his heritage to a man who has not labored for it. This also is vanity and great evil. Didn't Carter start his sermon last Sunday with that saying that, hard times produce strong men or something like that, good men? Good men produce easy times, and then what did I say? Strong men produce easy times, and then easy times produce weak men. It's like you want to leave an inheritance to your children, but not just for the sake of leaving an inheritance to your children. You want to teach your children to be good men and women so that they can carry it on to the next generation. But obviously, there's always going to be failure somewhere down the line. And it's all for nothing anyway. So that's why he's lamenting here. He's going to leave it to a heritage to a man who's not labored for it, and that's not, generally speaking, a very good recipe. You need to learn to earn your way. But this is vanity, and it's a great evil. Because what has a man for all his labor and for the striving of his heart with which he has toiled under the sun? All his days are sorrowful, and his work burdensome. Even in the night his heart takes no rest. This all is vanity. So the stress, the depression, and so forth continues to set in this search for meaning. Solomon finds none. Now, chapter 2:24 starts this concept that he starts mulling over and starting to apply to this search. So this is a pretty key part here. I would highlight it if you wanted to in your Bibles, because this is a major turning point. It says he then states the practical implication he reaches time after time. And it's this in a sentence: nothing is better than for a man to enjoy life as a gift from God. So if we can learn how to view reality correctly, what we will be able to learn to do is enjoy the life that God has given us here in the right way. And it will be a source of joy and happiness, but it will be done because we have the right worldview. And it will have to do with the fact that we recognize that it's a gift from God, and it's given to us for a purpose of preparing us for the everlasting life that he has in store. And if it's not used that way, then it's going to be vain and vanity. So here's how he states it, verse 24. Nothing is better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw was from the hand of God. You see the turn there? Usually you expect him to say, this I saw was vanity and grasping after the wind. But here he says, this I saw was from the hand of God. So there is a sense in which it sounds hedonistic, or what's the word, Epicurean? Let us eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. You know, Paul even quoted Epicurus there in 1 Corinthians 15. If there is no resurrection from the dead, if it's all going to go just turn to darkness and we zap out of existence when we die, let us eat, drink, and be merry. Because this is the only life we got. Just try to get as much pleasure as you can and then just lights out. That's sad, but I mean, that's Epicureanism. And so this sounds like it, but this predates Epicurus by a long time. And so that's not what Solomon means here. He means, let's learn how to enjoy the gift God gave us of this life the best we can, but view it correctly. It's from God's hand. So when we now put God into the equation, we'll be able to draw conclusions that are more correct, because this is what we've left out of it. Okay? So let's see how I wrote it down here. Little letter A. Man has no control over the vicissitudes of life. What does that mean? The things that you have no control over, God does. He's the sovereign one who gave you the life and caused you to be born when you're born and where you're born, to whom you're born, and that part of it, and then gives you free will from the moment that you become accountable and you make your choices and all that. But chapter 3, verses 1 and following is that very popular passage that says, you don't have any control over these things. There is a season for everything. There's a time for every purpose under heaven. And then he mentions there's a time to be born, a time to die. You ultimately don't have really much control over either one of those. A time to plant, a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to break down, a time to build up, to weep, to laugh, to mourn, to dance, to cast away stones and to gather stones, to embrace, to refrain from embracing. So you've been given a life from God, and there are various things that you need to learn to go with the flow of. That's a good English sentence, isn't it? You need to learn to go with the flow of certain things. And this is the life that God has given you. So that we leave that in his purpose, and he doesn't say it here, but we just strive to obey, be obedient, and be thankful that God has given us grace. Now, so man has no control of the vicissitudes of life. There is a time for everything. So the best a man can do is learn to take these as opportunities from the hand of God. When we realize, number one, that all events have a beautiful divine purpose, notice he said, every purpose under heaven. See, these things aren't random. These things aren't just happenstance. God is sovereign. And God knows what world he created, right? And he knows the purpose for the world. And so with his sovereignty, he guides human history, including the times that war come and the times that peace comes, the times that we live and the times that we die, and all of this. So we want to realize all events have a beautiful divine purpose behind them. And number two, we will never figure them out. We will never manipulate them to our own end. Right? So you're not going to read the stars and then look at the horoscope and make sure that you do whatever, and then things will start, falling in place for you. No, we trust God. We look to God for the answer and for the sovereignty. So if we learn that, then 3, we should learn to trust these as gifts from God. And then we can rejoice and we can do good in our lives. And we can then enjoy our labor. You can have some peace saying, God gave me the fruits of my labor because he gave me the ability to labor, and he gave me the brain to think with, and he gave me all of this. All goes back to him, and I just have to trust him. So here's the way he states that. So if you'll notice in verse 11, for example, he has made, we're in Ecclesiastes 3:11, he has made everything beautiful in its time. And also, he has put eternity in their hearts, except that no one can find out the work that God does from beginning to end. That is a very meaningful verse that carries so many implications. I just already read them, basically. The fact that there is the beautiful divine purpose behind everything, okay? But we'll never figure them out. That is to say, no one can find out the work that God does from beginning to end. And instead, verse 12, I know that nothing is better for them, that is for mankind, than to rejoice, to do good in their lives, and that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of his labor. It is the gift of God. So you can see why at first it kind of sounds Epicurean. It's like, oh, well, so it is about my pleasure. But Solomon is saying, listen, I've been trying to find ultimate meaning, real fulfillment in things of life, and I ended up realizing how fleeting life is and how mortal I am and how purposeless all of this is. And it caused me to go into depression and a Psalm 88 state of affairs, so to speak. But the point is that I was leaving this out of it. That God has a purpose for things, and He's put me in it for His purposes, not mine. So whenever I yield to that and say, God, I want to be a part of your purpose, so I want to obey you, and whenever I do obey, now all the things that I work for, they have eternal value. Does that surprise you? They have eternal value because the things that I work for and labor and earn and get, it shapes me. It shapes my soul so that I'm prepared for whatever God has in store for me in eternity, whatever work He has for me in store for eternity, so that I can do it with ultimate joy and ultimate fulfillment. Right? It's a gift from God. This life is simply a time for you to prepare and to learn what it means to live by faith and so forth. Okay. So little Roman numeral 2 at the middle of the page says, fear of God, that is faith, is the only way to see the connection between the temporary and the eternal. That's verse 14. And following, I know that whatever God does, see, that's different than whatever I have labored and toiled for. Whatever God does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be added to it, nothing taken from it. God does it. Men should fear before Him. That which is has already been. And what is to be has already been. And God requires an account of what is past. He's basically saying this is the lot of mankind no matter when you're born. Because God is in sovereign control over the flow of time. And so everybody's going to stand judgment, and everybody is going to be able to receive the rewards, the grace and the gift of eternal life because of how they approached life. And they all should approach it this way, saying, I want to know my Creator so that I can follow Him, so that I can obey Him and be prepared for His eternal reward. Because what He does is forever, not what I do. And what He does is He shapes my soul in preparation for eternity through my labors. Okay. Letter C, this thought recurs throughout the book. So I've listed, you can see there's chapter 3, 22, 5, 18, 8, 15, 9, 7 through 9. Let's very quickly just notice this. 3:22, for example. By the way, somebody just want to read that?
I have seen that there is nothing better than for a person to enjoy his activities, because that is what is his reward. For he can enable him to see what will happen after he dies.
So are you seeing that's the same thing that he said back in verse 12 and 13? It's basically the same thing. Thank you. Somebody read 5:18.
Here is what I have seen to be good and fitting to eat, to drink, and enjoy oneself in all one's labor, in which he toils under the sun during the few years of his life, which God has given him, for this is his reward.
So there you go. That's basically the same point. 8:15.
So I commend it and enjoy them, because a man has nothing better under the sun than to eat, drink, and be merry, for this will remain with him in his labor all the days of his life, which God gives him under the sun.
Very good. Let's just do one more. 9, 7 through 9.
That which is
all your fleeting days. For that is your portion in life and in your struggle under the sun. Is that all?
Yeah. That's just amazing, isn't it? It's just wonderful. That's such. Now that we kind of get a better grasp of what he's saying there, that is the key to happy and successful life. All things being equal, right? That's it. So God doesn't want you to be an ascetic where you deny yourself of certain necessities in order to bring pain and suffering on your flesh, in order to maybe purge yourself from sin. This was asceticism of the Middle Ages and things. The monks sometimes would engage in that kind of thing, thinking, well, this is a way to get more spiritually minded. Paul says in Colossians chapter 2:23, that has no value against the indulgence of the flesh. Asceticism. That's no value. And Solomon is saying that essentially here. What God wants you to do is to enjoy the life that you have. But you have to enjoy it the right way, or it won't be enjoyed at all, not ultimately. And that's what he's saying here. I always like verse 10 of chapter 9. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might, for there is no work or device or knowledge or wisdom in the grave where you are going. I see one of my boys, that's always a go-to verse for me, whenever I'm trying to teach them to do something when they were growing up. Don't do it halfway. If you do it halfway, you're just going to do it again, because you're defeating the whole purpose of learning anything. Do it the best you can, because that's the only thing that's going to give it eternal value, because it shapes you. It's not about the fact that the yard is cut perfectly. That's not what's eternal. It's you that is going to be eternally changed by it. So whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all of your might to the Lord. How did Paul say that in the New Testament, that same basic point? Colossians 3, verse 23. And whatever you do, do it heartily, as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward and inheritance, because you serve the Lord Christ. It's the same point, right? When you are a Christian and you have hope of living forever in the next life, the things you do in this life change you and prepare you to be not only productive and be able to serve God in a way that you otherwise wouldn't, but you will have a fulfillment. You will have a peace and a comfort and so forth forever and ever that is priceless. All right. So that is the basic recurring thought all the way through the book. Now, probably the most popular passage of Ecclesiastes, chapter 12, verse 13 and 14. I say here, the same thought that we've been reading in several of these verses finds its final formulation in these verses. Somebody read chapter 12, verses 13 and 14.
Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all.
Verse 14, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil.
So again, that's stated with different words. It doesn't say eat, drink, and enjoy the labor of all, and all that. But it's what he's been saying the whole time. You can eat, drink, and enjoy the labor of your hands and so forth only as you fear God and keep his commandments. Because this is what it is all about. Without that, nothing matters. With that, everything you do matters. So that's why it's an all or nothing thing, right? There's no in between. And so you cannot serve both God and mammon. Okay, I just say here it was the conclusion of the whole matter. Under the sun, there can be no real happiness without true holiness. So, practical points on happiness and holiness here. Just some ways to state it maybe for us today in a different way. Letter A, accept your ignorance of the future and place your trust in the God of the future. Have you ever heard, depression is related to the past in your mind, and anxiety is related to the future in your mind. And oftentimes anxiety is a false belief about the future. Meaning, most of the time, the things that you are most anxious about never come to pass. But see, they're already destroying you because you're not doing this. Accepting, listen, I don't have control of the future. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. But I do know that my God does. And that I'll leave it up to Him. That's walking by faith. Our inability to determine the future is a gift from God. Would you want to know everything that's going to happen to you in the future? I mean, what happens if you learn, by the way, next month and this same day, you're going to be in a terrible car wreck? You know? I mean, I know it sounds goofy because then you go, well, I'm not going to get in a car then that day. But I'm just saying, if you knew, okay, you're going to be diagnosed with a certain disease, you know, just, you don't want to know that. Because it's, first of all, it's out of your control, by and large, all things being equal. And God takes care of that stuff anyway. That's His business, not ours, in that sense. Okay? So it makes us trust Him. I don't know how much we want to get into this. Probably not much more. We don't know if good or bad will come to us. Jesus Himself articulated this principle in Matthew 6:25 and following. Be anxious for nothing. Let's see. Do not worry about your life, what you will eat, what you will drink, what you will put on. God clothes the flowers of the field and so forth. He takes care of the birds of the air. You know that passage. So that's number one. Number B says, be content. And do not try to change the things over which you have no control. Is that not an implication of what we've been seeing in Ecclesiastes? There's a time for everything. God is sovereign. Be content with the lot in life that God has put before you. And do not try to change the things over which you have to control. Here's another little nugget from psychology that we could know from the Bible all along. Your stress level is related to you trying to have control over things that you have no control over. Or let's say the unhealthy stress part, you know, the part that's pointless and is self-destructive. When you try to control things that you have no control over. And so the first thing you want to do whenever you are overwhelmed with stress is draw a line down the center of a piece of paper and write everything over here that you have no control over. In whatever it is that's causing your troubles. And then write everything you do have control over on this side. And then this side, you fold the paper and you say, I'm giving God this side. Because I don't have any control over it. I don't have any control over the decisions that other people make. Now, I do have control over, okay, maybe I can influence them for whatever good, but that's still, I'll just do what I can do. And pray about it. And I have to leave that stress behind. So I think Ecclesiastes is teaching us that. Solomon was trying to have control over getting his own fulfillment. And he tried in all these ways, and it ended in terrible stress and depression. Many expend their energy trying to change things over which they have no control. We have no control over death. We have no control over our health. By and large, you understand, all things being equal. In other words, we want to eat well, within reason, right? I mean, I eat a Krispy Kreme, I just ate one, and I'll eat another one. But I don't want to eat completely bonkers. But, so we do have some control over those things, but I'm saying, by and large, all things being equal, these are things in the hand of God, right? And so we have to realize that, even over our wealth, right? It can be gone in a day. Somebody can steal it. Moth and rust will corrupt. Thieves will break through and steal. So we lay up for ourselves treasures in heaven. Letter C, use your resources to the best of your ability. Some of these things that Solomon went through to try to find meaning, some of these things were noble undertakings. Wisdom is noble. Education is good. Hard work, laboring, that's good. But the point is that they should only be used to serve God and to enjoy true happiness in this world. And so these are crucial points to bring out from the book of Ecclesiastes. And then finally, Matthew 24:15, the one-talent man was not condemned for having only one talent. That's what the Lord allotted him. Okay? So his sin was not in not being very, not having many abilities. He was condemned because he didn't use them to the best of his ability. He buried it. And he was fearful instead of faithful. He did wrong by doing nothing. So make the most of what you have from God. Fear God and keep his commandments. This is the conclusion of the whole matter. And then what I said on the back there, which we won't go through, but those are passages that talk about the various areas of life where Solomon sought meaning. And so those are interesting to look at just to see what he says about popularity or stockpiling riches or, human relationships, looking for it in human promises, all of that. So, all is vanity without fear. Okay. You're welcome. I'm done. Just saying. Last week I went a little bit over. Some of you'd say a lot over. But most of it was consumed with me trying to make jokes about how tired everybody was. So I didn't do that this week. So we're done early now.
So
And
it's a gift that God gives us to be able to go home and take a nap.
I think we should view it that way.
Yes.
Just don't be lazy, right? That's the thing. Don't be lazy. But yes, very good. So enjoy life, but think about how you can serve God and one another in every area of life. Thank you guys so much for your attention. Joe, would you mind standing and saying a prayer right there where you are, and we'll be dismissed for the rest of the day? Thank you. Appreciate it, brother.